Hey everybody, Jimmy Smith back for Crossroads Part 2. If you didn't see Part Number 1, what it is are fights where you look back on them retroactively and go, man, that fighter was never the same after that loss. It could be because of a beating, it could be a tactical thing, it could be age, it could be their chin is shot, a lot of reasons why. But when we look back at that fight, we go, that fighter was never the same. So I call him Crossroads Fight. This is Part 2. Like, subscribe, leave a comment about something you want to see, whether this subject or something else, and maybe I'll be able to talk about it. But there were some suggestions in the comment section that I'm going to get to right now. First off, Fedor Emelianenko. Now, I have a slight disagreement. It was Brennan 4159, 5 days ago, wrote Fedor Bigfoot Silva. Yes, Fedor was shot by then, but I think it was the fight before that. I think it was a Verdum fight. That was kind of the crossroads fight for him for a lot of reasons. Bigfoot Silva, not a great heavyweight, beat the crap out of Fedor. That was when we saw him. He's really not the same guy, but I think it was caused by the previous fight. We saw it in the previous fight. Now, there's a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking about Fedor Emelianenko, partly because this generation of MMA fans never saw him in his prime, or they didn't see him at all. So they kind of saw him in Bellator, where he was, good, not great. And you think, man, this is Fedor Emelianenko? Like, this is the guy? To me, that's kind of like, seeing Muhammad Ali take on Leon Spinks and going, really? That's the GOAT? Well, no, he was past his prime by that point. Wasn't fighting at the best of his abilities. Same thing, Fedor Emelianenko, his run from his first Pride win, which was semi-shield, that was back in 2002, goes undefeated until 2010, where he fights Fabricio Verdum. In that stretch, he fought everybody in Pride, had a murderous schedule. He beats Kazuyuki Fujita, he beats Big Nog, he beats Heath Herring, Simi Schilt, as I said, Kevin Randleman, Mark Coleman. Big Nog, another time, they got a draw once. Mirko Krokop, Mark Hunt. He just beat everybody. Then he went to Affliction. He beat Tim Sylvia, Andrei Arlovsky. I called both of those. And then goes to Strikeforce, beats Brett Rogers, and then loses 3 in a row. And while he does bounce back and get some wins in other promotions, his reign as, the last emperor, it was over. And a big part of it to me was he fought so consistently in Pride. They really kept him busy, and I think that made his timing really, really good. He was the kind of guy who had a commitment to everything he threw, these overhand rights and big hooks, and he just threw everything into every punch. That takes timing. That takes confidence. That takes commitment. All of those things require you fighting all the time. Right? You're always sharp. You're always right where you need to be. And I feel like the collapse of Pride due to the Yakuza scandal, which would be a totally different video, his main, promotion that was paying him went away. And so he went to Affliction. He bounced around. But the problem with that bouncing around is he wasn't as active as I think he should have been. The end of Pride, he goes to Bodog. He beats Matt Linlin, Hongman Choi. He beats him at some Japanese promotion. All of them, by the way, first-round finishes. Tim Sylvia in Affliction, Andrei Arlovsky in Affliction. So between 2006 and 2009, when he loses to, in 2010 when he loses to Verdum, it's 2 fights in 2009, 1 in 2008, 2 in 2007. He's just not fighting that consistently when in Pride he had fought all the time. I think that hurt him. Another thing is he was getting older. Just is what it is. He was getting old by the time he fought Verdum. Also, he was the prototype of a smaller, more athletic, more versatile heavyweight. Cain Velasquez springs to mind. Stipe Miocic, of course, kind of springs to mind when I think about that. And that prototype of heavyweight became much more normal. And I think kind of the division caught up to him a little bit, where the big plotting giant, the Mark Colemans or whatever, he could beat those all day. But that wasn't what heavyweights were doing at the time. And I think Andrei Arlovsky, when I called his loss to Fedor in Affliction, Arlovsky was winning. He was beating Fedor pretty good and then went for a flying knee. Fedor caught him with an overhand right over the top. So you saw the cracks in the armor that, not quite as quick as it used to be. His timing isn't as good as it used to be. These quicker, faster, more mobile heavyweights are giving him problems. Now, he beat Arlovsky, but it showed what was going to happen coming up. So I think it's the division catching up with him, age catching up with him, and the consistency of Pride not being there. So another one that you guys pointed out, that's probably the modern day, the biggest one people think of in the modern day is Tony Ferguson, Justin Gaethje. Justin Gaethje beating the career out of Tony Ferguson. This was May 9th, 2020. And at the time going in, Tony Ferguson was 25-3. It was for the interim UFC lightweight championship. And Justin Gaethje beat the brakes off of Tony Ferguson. He has not been the same guy since. That was the start of his famed losing streak that he's still on right now, which is now 7 in a row. Justin Gaethje, Charles Oliveira, Beneil Dariush, Michael Chandler, Nate Diaz, Bobby Green, Paddy Pimblett. Hasn't won one of them. Hasn't come particularly close to winning any of them. One of the things I want to talk about when it comes to this, and in a general way as well, when I was talking about Chuck Liddell earlier when he lost to Rampage, and I said his timing was kind of gone. A lot of people went, well, his chin's gone. It can be difficult to separate defensive timing from chin because sometimes someone doesn't ever get hit. We don't know if they have a chin. Roy Jones Jr., if you're a boxing fan, in his prime, never got hit. Floyd Mayweather never got hit. So does Floyd Mayweather have a chin? I don't know. I've never seen the guy take a decent shot, except maybe once or twice in his whole career. So a lot of times when your defense goes and you start getting knocked out, well, his chin went. Well, is it his chin or is he getting hit a lot more than he used to? A fighter that always got hit a lot, and then suddenly those same shots are hurting them or dropping them, that's their chin going. A fighter that never gets hit, suddenly getting hit, their defense is gone. So it's easy to confuse the two, but they're not always the same thing. With Chuck Liddell, you can make a case that he had taken shots earlier from tough guys and hadn't gone down, and then started going down with regularity because his chin was gone. I'm more on the side that he didn't get hit that much previously, and that as his timing went, he's just getting hit a lot more than he used to. His ability to take a shot did decrease. It always decreases. But for a while there, it was just he was just getting hit more than he used to. There. So, in this case, Tony Ferguson got hit a lot. A lot. Heading into the Gaethje fight, that was one of his problems. He would just take a lot of damage in every fight. Folks, that is just something you need to deal with at the gym. Like, take 3 to give 1 doesn't work. And Justin Gaethje is a great example of that. When he first joined the UFC, lost to Eddie Alvarez, lost to Dustin Poirier, I thought, man, he's going to have a really entertaining career for about 10 seconds. And then he's going to get the crap beaten out of him, his chin's going to go, and he's done. And, the fighters that fight like Justin Gaethje and Tony Ferguson don't last. They just take too many beatings. They don't get as far as they need to go. And Justin Gaethje made the adjustments necessary to be a better boxer, better footwork, better defense, and you see how far it has led him. Tony Ferguson just never made those adjustments. He always got hit a lot, and against a power puncher, it caught up to him. And the issue with this fight is I remember it being one of the saddest endings I had ever seen. Because if you remember, he took some shots and he kind of just collapsed. Like, he didn't fall down. He just turned away. Like, I can't take this anymore. Almost like the end of the Rory McDonald, Robbie Lawler fight that I talked about previously, when his nose is smashed and he just collapses. Tony, you saw in his face, he couldn't take anymore. And when you see that moment in a fight, the idea that you can bounce back and have anything left to give, it's really hard. And so I think his lack of defense caught up with him. His lack of really high-level wrestling, meaning D1, Olympic trials, top of the food chain. He never had that. That caught up with him, where he couldn't get that break when he needed it. He couldn't get a takedown every time he wanted against somebody like Justin Gaethje, who was an All-American. So it was more that the defensive lapses finally caught up to him. He just couldn't do anything more. So it's sad. He hasn't won since. And the level of opposition, in my opinion, has gone down and down and down. So you can understand him losing to Charles Oliveira. Charles Oliveira obviously ended up becoming champion. Really great fighter. Beneil Dariush, perennial contender right up there near the top. Michael Chandler, okay, losing record in the UFC, but it's been against great guys. Bobby Green, Nate Diaz, win some, lose some guy. Bobby Green, win some, lose some guy. Paddy Pimblett, I don't think Paddy Pimblett's that great. But as the opposition has gone down, his performances haven't gone up. He doesn't have a lot to give. I think his career is beaten out of him. I don't think he wins again in the UFC unless they give him an obvious, ridiculous softball. Another one, BJ Penn, Frankie Edgar. BJ Penn, one of the most talented fighters of all time. When he lost to Frankie Edgar, what was so interesting about that is people forget, too, when you talk about, greatest upsets of all time, people don't mention Frankie Edgar, BJ Penn. People forget a lot because at the end of his career, how great BJ Penn was. He was a huge favorite against Frankie Edgar. Frankie Edgar was solidly in the good, not great category. It was he's solid, good wrestler, can do a lot of things. Undersized for the weight class, right? He had a few problems. And most people just didn't think he had much of a chance of beating BJ Penn when he went in there. And the issue with that fight, when you look at it, was close. It was controversial. Most people, myself included, thought BJ Penn would win the rematch, and Frankie just completely out-hustled him in the rematch. And what it showed to me is a weakness in BJ Penn's game, which he's incredibly talented. Talented fighters, and people, period, in sports, whatever, tend to be a little lazy. Things come easily to them, right? You just figure it out. You just, I'm better than everybody else. You don't have to work as hard as everybody else. And what Frankie Edgar showed is you could out-hustle BJ Penn. You couldn't out-technique him, right? Kenny Florian told me nobody ever punched him harder than BJ Penn. He hit incredibly hard, but you could out-hustle him. You could out-work him. You could out-cardio him, all right? Also, you could put him on his butt. You could beat him in the guard, right? Everyone went crazy about BJ Penn's guard. BJ Penn, he beat you on top. His guard wasn't as dangerous as everybody said it was. So when Frankie Edgar, I think, kind of, broke the myth of BJ Penn's talent and his guard and all that stuff, it was easy for other fighters to kind of outwork him. And if you look at the losses after that, that's usually what happened, is fighters outworked BJ Penn. And Frankie Edgar was the first guy to really outwork him. Beat him in the rematch, and then the third fight was just ridiculous. I don't get what BJ Penn was thinking with that strategy. But BJ Penn was never the same guy. Never the same guy. Had flashes of greatness, right? He could win one round on some really good guys, and then he would ultimately fold at the end. He just couldn't sustain pressure against somebody who was putting the pace on him, making him work really, really hard. But BJ Penn versus Frankie Edgar, the first one, an absolutely monumental, in my humble opinion, Crossroads fight. Cody Garbrandt, TJ Dillashaw. That is one of the biggest modern ones of all time. What was great about that fight was the rivalry, the energy behind it, the trash talk, back and forth, blah, 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 former teammates. It seemed to have everything necessary to make a great rivalry and a great fight. And at the time, Cody Garbrandt was undefeated. He had defeated Dominic Cruz, smashed him. A guy it's not only hard to beat, hard to even look decent against. And he smashed Dominic Cruz in a fantastic performance. Takes on TJ Dillashaw, hurts TJ Dillashaw in the first round, almost has him out. TJ Dillashaw able to come back with a knockout in round number 2, 2 minutes, 41 seconds. And the famous, yelling in his face photo, great stuff, close fight. Second fight, we kind of saw the gap between TJ Dillashaw and Cody Garbrandt, where, it was close for a minute, but TJ was just better that second time around. Once again, ends up getting a knockout, 4-10 of round number 1, a little bit earlier. Since then, Cody Garbrandt has only beat Rafael Sunsao, Brian Kelleher, Trevin Jones. He's lost to Kai Kara-France, Rob Font, Pedro Munoz, and Davison Figueiredo his last time out. So this was one of those where he is an excellent boxer. He does have real power. He took some shots in those fights, I think, that weakened his chin in the long term. So I think, for example, when I look at the Kai Kara-France fight, I didn't think that was a devastating punch he got hit with him. Boom, he was out. Same deal with Pedro Munoz, who's not known as a knockout puncher necessarily. So the issue is, I can see the effects on his chin, first off. Secondly, he's a tight boxer, but we saw in the TJ Dillashaw fight, the second one, it's kind of like if you're outstriking him or outboxing him, he doesn't really have a plan B. He doesn't have the toolkit he's used. Punching was enough to become a champion. So I didn't get a big enough toolkit to go, okay, punching's not working right now. I'm losing this striking battle. There are other things I can do. I can pick you apart at range with my feet. I can use my takedown. He doesn't really do that. I remember him going at TJ Dillashaw in that second fight, and he was rocked, and TJ Dillashaw was outboxing him, and I went, all right, he's got to do something else. And he didn't. He got knocked out. And so what I think got revealed is A, his chin is a little bit suspect since the TJ Dillashaw fights. Also, his toolkit didn't need to expand necessarily. He didn't have to broaden his offense. And when he found somebody who could outbox him, or a group of fighters that could outbox him, he didn't have the toolkit to do anything else. And in the Davison Figueiredo fight was the last one he had at UFC 300, where he lost. His ground game, wasn't there when it came to Davison Figueiredo. Was able to take him down, control him on the ground, and we saw the limits of Cody Garbrandt's game. You can get to the top sometimes without being that well-rounded. Alex Pereira is a great example. But can you stay there for the long term and really beat a lot of contenders without being well-rounded? At a lower weight class, that's really hard. 35, they can do so much. The champs at 35, they're great wrestlers, they're great scramblers, they have everything. And Cody Garbrandt was one of the few comparative specialists at 135 pounds, and that worked against him. So let me know if you have any more suggestions. I can always make a part 3. Let me know in the comments section. Appreciate you. Talk to you soon.